She handed me divorce papers like she was sliding over a coffee menu. Same calm smile. Same indifferent tone. I think I need space, she said, as if we hadn't shared nearly 3 decades, 2 dogs, and an entire pantry system. She color-coded herself. I'm thinking of Bali. Maybe a little creative writing course in Santa Fe. Something for me, finally. She placed the manila envelope right next to the salt shaker, like it wouldn't rewire the very structure of our lives. I stared at the reflection of the ceiling fan in her tea. Then I looked up. Okay, I said. Just like that. She blinked. Twice. Okay, that's it. I picked up the envelope. Didn't even check what kind of lawyer she used. I already knew it wouldn't matter. You've already made your decision, I said. Nothing to fight. She waited for the outburst. The groveling. The typical male panic when faced with being discarded like old gym socks. I offered none of that. I just signed. Neatly. Pen didn't even hesitate. A little callus formed on my finger where it used to rest when I took meeting notes for people who no longer work above me. Her expression didn't change, but her posture did. Slight tilt backward. Confused. She opened her mouth like she wanted to rehearse another line, but the performance was over. Curtains down. Applause canceled. Sandra had always believed in control by chaos. Emotional entropy disguised as passion. The minute I didn't engage, she lost footing. I could practically see her mind rewriting the scene. Maybe he's in shock. Maybe he'll call me tonight, drunk, begging. He didn't. I didn't. She left with a single suitcase. Designer luggage. The one I bought her on our 20th, said she wanted to see the world, expand her identity. Funny how that identity never included me. And now, for those of you listening, yeah, I know. Most of you won't subscribe. Over 90% don't. But if you're still here, still reading, do me a favor. Hit that button. It's the smallest thing you can do, but it tells the team this kind of truth matters. That we're not just shouting into the void. Anyway, what Sandra didn't realize was that this had all begun months ago. Quietly, while she was Googling top 10 spiritual retreats and posting filtered pictures of garden brunches, I was observing. Calculating. I don't mean that in some cartoon villain way. I mean in the real, meticulous, accountant of the soul kind of way. Watching where she paused when she walked past the mirror. Noticing the books on personal freedom stacking up on her nightstand. How she stopped using we in conversations. You can learn a lot when you stop trying to fix things. When she first said, I feel like I'm suffocating. I didn't even get defensive. I offered to open a window. She laughed like I'd made a dad joke. I wasn't joking. The thing with Sandra is, she never imagined I could survive without her. She'd mistaken my quiet loyalty for dependency. But the thing about loyalty is, once it's broken, it doesn't scream. It just disappears. And when it goes, it takes something permanent with it. She packed her car the next morning, humming. Waved to the neighbor like she was going on sabbatical, not detonating 26 years. I stayed in the kitchen, sipping black coffee from a mug she always hated. Said it looked like a dentist's promotional gift. That was the first thing I threw in the dishwasher. A little victory. The second thing I did, walked out back to the guest house. Not many people knew we even had one. Tucked behind the hedge, built by my father after his stroke. It was technically part of a family trust, something Sandra never bothered to read the paperwork on. She thought it was just a shed with plumbing. That shed had its own entrance, its own utility lines, and more importantly, its own title. Fully paid off. Never touched in any refinancing deals. It was quiet, insulated, private. It became mine before she even drove off. And while she was posting day one of my healing journey on Instagram with a rented surfboard, I was calling a locksmith. The next week, she texted, Hey, forgot a few things. Mind if I swing by? I replied, already boxed. Left by the garage. She replied with a thumbs up emoji. Then a second message. You didn't waste time, huh? Nope. And I wouldn't. Not anymore. I didn't mourn her. I reorganized. Most men, when their wives leave, spiral. Get drunk. Sleep on the couch they never liked. Let the dishes pile up like a monument to abandonment. I went the other way. The moment Sandra pulled out of the driveway, the house stopped being a shared space and started becoming a project. I moved out of the main house within the hour, guest house key already in my pocket. The place still smelled like cedar from when my father used to nap there after his second bypass. He'd insisted on building it to escape your mother's catastrophes, which I found amusing because Mom was, by all measures, the calm one. Still, he got the permits, the construction crew, the soundproof walls, the independent water line. It's a damn ark, he once told me. When everything floods, you'll thank me. He wasn't wrong. I wiped the dust off the mini fridge, plugged it in, and stood in that quiet little arc like I'd just stepped into my own skin for the first time in years. No echoing silence. No judgmental feng shui. No sarcastic, "Wow, that's what you're wearing," comments on my way to the grocery store. First call, the locksmith. Changed every lock on the main house and both gates. Not out of malice, out of logic. She said she needed to find herself, not store herself in my living room until she got bored of healing. Second call, utilities. Transferred gas, water, electric, all into the trust. Legally airtight. My father had buried that clause so deep in the trust documents, you'd need a backhoe to unearth it. Sandra had once skimmed the papers and said, "Whatever, it's all yours anyway." I nodded. Now it was. I boxed up the last of her things, scarves, bath oils, a few mugs with annoying motivational quotes, and stacked them neatly in the garage. Labeled, climate controlled. I didn't break anything. Didn't burn photos. Didn't even read the old anniversary cards. Just archived it all like it was someone else's history. A week later, her Prius rolled back up the driveway. She walked into the foyer without knocking, stopped abruptly, and looked around like someone had rearranged the furniture in her childhood home. Which they had, figuratively and literally. She turned toward the closet. Empty. Just one hanger left, swinging like a question mark. "You didn't wait for me?" "No reason to." She laughed, short and sharp. "You're moving fast." "No, Sandra. You moved fast. I just stopped standing still." She walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge, as if muscle memory might restore the past. It didn't. There was no oat milk. No almond butter. Just eggs. Black coffee. A six-pack of something called bitter redemption ale my brother left behind during his divorce. Fitting. She closed the fridge. "You'll regret this." I tilted my head. Regret what exactly? She didn't answer. Her eyes scanned the space, lingering too long on the bare shelves and clean counters. No more tea rack. No more decorative copper utensils she never used. Just functionality. Efficiency. Cold. The house didn't reject her. It simply didn't recognize her anymore. As she walked out with 2 suitcases, she hesitated at the door. Maybe she expected me to say something sentimental. Maybe she thought I'd crack, offer one last plea, one lifeline. But silence held. Only the screen door hissed shut behind her. The next morning, I walked back into the main house. Turned off the alarm. Checked the windows. There was a strange emptiness, yes, but not the painful kind. More like a canvas after the charcoal sketch has been erased. Something you could rebuild on, if you had the will. And I did. The message came in while I was fixing the deadbolt on the back door. Not a dramatic job, but satisfying. No alarms, no conflict, just metal sliding into place, locking out the unnecessary. My phone buzzed in my flannel shirt pocket. Unknown number, but not unfamiliar. One glance and I knew. Claire. Sandra's younger stepsister. Half-sister, technically, though I'd never heard either of them use the word. Claire was in her early 30s now, though I still pictured her in the oversized sweatshirts and crooked ponytails she wore as a teenager. The girl who always stayed quiet at family dinners, who asked about books I read instead of talking about herself. The one Sandra constantly brushed aside with lines like, "She means well, but she'll never really go anywhere." Claire's text read, "Hey, just checking in. You doing okay?" I stared at the message for a moment. No assumptions. No pity. Just human. I replied, "I'm good. Actually better." She responded within seconds. "Want to grab coffee sometime?" We met 2 days later at a cafe that didn't try too hard. No marble countertops or pretentious drink sizes. Just strong coffee, a quiet corner, and the familiar aroma of old wood and cinnamon. Claire was already there, tucked into a booth by the window, scrolling through something on her phone. She looked up, smiled. Not the strained, obligatory kind, but real. Grounded. "You look taller," she said, grinning. I chuckled. "Guess freedom has posture benefits." She laughed. Not the high-pitched, filtered kind that Sandra deployed at fundraisers, but the kind that feels earned. She looked good. Hair pulled back, soft sweater, no visible armor. Claire had always had this way of making space feel warmer just by sitting in it. I used to think it was naivety. Turns out, it was restraint. We talked. Not about Sandra, not much anyway. Claire asked how I was sleeping, what I'd been reading, if I kept up woodworking, something I used to do before life got loud. I asked about her job, graphic design at a nonprofit, and she lit up. She talked about teaching art classes at a local rec center, about redesigning menus for small restaurants who couldn't afford big agencies. "Doesn't pay much," she said, sipping her coffee. "But it feels like it matters." She didn't apologize for her choices. Didn't frame them in comparison to anyone else. Claire never had Sandra's edge, her curated chaos, her rotating list of personal reinventions. She just existed. Fully. Kindly. It struck me halfway through the second cup. Sandra had spent years treating Claire like a background character. Called her things like sweet but invisible, or just a helper. She once told me Claire would probably marry a poet and sell bracelets on Etsy. Maybe she thought Claire was harmless because Claire didn't challenge her narrative. Or maybe she knew, deep down, that the kindness she mocked wasn't weakness. It was strength she couldn't manipulate. As we stood outside afterward, Claire glanced at me with this mix of shyness and certainty. "I was honestly worried you'd be wrecked," she said. "But you seemed clearer." I looked up at the overcast sky, then back at her. She said she needed space. I just made sure she got all of it. Claire smiled. "Well, if you ever need anything, fixing up the house, or just not being alone, let me know." I nodded. "You still remember where the spare key is?" "Under the ugly frog statue," she grinned. "Yeah, never liked that thing. You and me both." We said goodbye, no awkwardness. Just a small wave and a strange, growing calm. As I watched her walk away, steady, shoulders relaxed, I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. Claire wasn't a kid anymore. And more importantly, she had never been the side character Sandra cast her as. She'd just been waiting for the noise to fade. And now, the silence had finally made room for her. The moving van wasn't loud. No dramatic beeping. No hurried movers shouting to each other. It arrived on a Wednesday morning, a soft rain tapping on the shingles, and Claire showed up 5 minutes early, ponytail, boots, sleeves rolled. She had a thermos of coffee for me, black, just how I like it. Said nothing about the weather or the fact that we were about to box up a life someone else had already abandoned. We started with the closets. Sandra's side was mostly empty already, but Claire helped with the stubborn bits, the tangled scarves she'd never worn, the stack of yoga DVDs unopened since 2014. Claire folded everything gently, like the items had stories, even if their owner no longer cared to tell them. No bitterness, no gossip, just task-oriented motion. In the hallway closet, she found Sandra's old vision board, duct taped to the inside of a cabinet. A faded collage of beaches, smiling couples, and a quote in curling font. "Don't be afraid to start over. It's a chance to build something better." Claire held it up. "Should we keep this?" I looked at it for half a beat. She already started over. Let's let her finish. Into the trash it went. We tackled the kitchen next. Claire scrubbed the baseboards while I pulled down Sandra's spice rack. Half the jars were expired, others were just for show. She found a cracked dish behind the microwave and laughed. "I remember this plate. She flipped out at Thanksgiving when I dropped one." "Yeah," said it was part of a rare set. "Bought it at Target clearance 2 days prior." Claire shook her head, smiling. Always had a flair for mythology. By lunchtime, we'd cleared out everything that screamed hers. The air already felt lighter. Claire made sandwiches, and we sat on the porch in silence. Not heavy silence, just the kind that feels earned after a morning of good work. Then she said it, casually. "You know, if it's okay, I could stay here for a bit." I raised an eyebrow. "In the main house?" She nodded. "Just while you settle things. Keep the plants alive. Patch what needs patching. It's a shame to let it sit empty." She wasn't wrong. The house had good bones, but it had been starved. Sandra decorated for optics, not warmth. Rugs that looked good on Instagram, but curled at the corners. Lamps too bright. A couch you weren't allowed to nap on. "Sure," I said. "Just don't replace my coffee with herbal tea, and we'll be fine." Claire smiled. "I'll keep the caffeine ratio above legal minimums." The next day, she moved in a single suitcase and a box of books. That was it. No parade. No declarations. Just quiet occupation. She started with the living room. Changed the curtains from those stiff beige things Sandra insisted were neutral and sophisticated to soft green ones that actually let in light. Replaced the harsh overhead bulb with a warm standing lamp that made the walls feel less like a waiting room and more like a home. She aired the rooms out, painted the bathroom, moved her little radio in, and played jazz while she wiped down the windowsills. I came by now and then to help, tightening door hinges, replacing a flickering hallway light. But mostly I watched. Claire didn't demand space. She made it. Without fanfare, without asking for validation. She treated the house like something worth reviving, not a stage for her next reinvention. Meanwhile, across town, Sandra was busy documenting her self-discovery. My phone fed me her filtered life through mutual contacts. Barefoot yoga poses on uneven rocks, cappuccinos beside journals with scripted covers, captions like, "She remembered who she was, and the game changed." She was always quoting women she didn't understand. And she had no idea Claire had moved in. None. I didn't broadcast it. Didn't update my relationship status. Didn't change the mailbox label. The trust owned the house, and the trust didn't do press releases. Claire's car sat in the driveway. She watered the ferns. Occasionally waved to the mailman. The place wasn't haunted anymore. It was healing. And for the first time in years, so was I. It started with a harmless little text. Hey, just realized I left one of my photo albums in the armoire. Mind if I swing by today? I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to be cruel, but because, well, what was there to say? She had made her exit. Clean break. Bali bracelets. Soul detox. She'd walked away from the entire stage, and now she wanted to come back to adjust the lighting. Claire was in the living room when I read it, curled up on the couch in that worn gray sweater of hers, a paperback on her lap, and one leg tucked under the other. There was music playing, something old and smooth from the radio, barely louder than a whisper. I didn't mention the message. Didn't need to. The air didn't shift. The house didn't brace for anything. Sandra didn't announce her arrival. Of course not. She pulled into the driveway around 3 p.m., tires crunching the gravel like she expected the sound alone to summon someone to greet her. She stepped out of the car and stood there for a moment, scanning the yard like it had betrayed her. The grass was trimmed. The hedges were neat. The solar lanterns she'd bought as a temporary mood piece had been replaced with soft copper ones Claire found at a flea market. She walked to the porch, heels clicking. The wind lifted the edge of her linen scarf. She paused, probably noticing the faint music inside. The glow of a lamp instead of that horrible white light she used to insist made the room look modern. Then she rang the bell. Not once. Not impatiently. Like she wasn't sure if she had the right to. Claire opened the door, slow and warm. The music spilled out with her, and so did the smell of something familiar. Apple, maybe cinnamon, maybe just the faint scent of clean wood. Sandra's eyes locked on Claire. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice tight, almost sharp. Claire didn't flinch. She just smiled. "Helping Nathan out. He's been great. Not defensive, not smug, just matter of fact." Sandra blinked, like someone just flicked the lights off in her brain. She stepped back slightly. "You're living here?" Claire tilted her head. "For now, just keeping things in order." Sandra tried to peer past her into the house, into her house. Except it didn't look like hers anymore. The furniture was rearranged, the walls repainted in a tone that actually felt human. A throw blanket draped casually over the arm of the couch. Claire's slippers near the base of the staircase. A small ceramic vase with dried lavender on the windowsill. Sandra would have called it quaint, which was her way of dismissing anything that wasn't sharp-edged and expensive. Claire didn't invite her in. Sandra didn't ask. Instead, she stepped off the porch in silence, her phone already out. I heard the buzz before I saw the screen. Sandra, 3:06 p.m. Why is she there? Sandra, 3:07 p.m. Are you serious? Sandra, 3:07 p.m. You let her move in? Sandra, 3:08 p.m. This is actually insane. I didn't reply. My phone went face down on the desk. No need to fuel that engine. 15 minutes later, another one came through. Sandra, 3:24 p.m. You're going to regret this. That one made me laugh. Softly. The kind of laugh you let out when you finally understand that someone who used to scare you doesn't even have the power to annoy you anymore. She thought I had let Claire move in. She had no idea how far behind she was. Sandra didn't understand that the house wasn't a possession, it was a reflection. And her reflection had been slowly vanishing for years. The house didn't kick her out. It just stopped waiting for her to come back. Now it had music, warmth, soft lamps, and conversations that didn't turn into interrogations. Now it had Claire. And Sandra? She had a view of it from the outside, through glass that no longer showed her face. Angela arrived on a Friday evening, fresh off a delayed flight, wheeling a suitcase bigger than she was. She hugged me at the door, tightly, like nothing in the world had changed. Her voice still carried that sharp wit I always admired. Sandra's tone, without Sandra's venom. "God, I miss the smell of this place," she said. "Still got that lemon oil wood polish thing going on." "It's Claire," I said casually. "She's got the place looking better than it did when your mom was here." Angela paused mid-step, one eyebrow raised. "Claire's here. She's staying in the guest room," I replied, ushering her toward the dining room where Claire was setting out silverware. "Helping out around the house. Makes the quiet a little less quiet." Angela glanced into the room, saw Claire in her soft blue sweater and apron dusted with flour. Claire looked up and smiled. Calm, grounded, utterly unbothered. For a half second, Angela's face twitched like she was recalibrating what she thought she knew. Wow, she said. This feels surprisingly normal. Dinner was roast chicken, roasted vegetables, and a lemon tart Claire had made from scratch. No pretense. Just good food and warm light. Angela loosened up quickly, especially once Claire brought up a story from years ago. Something about Angela trying to dye the family dog blue with Kool-Aid. Oh my God, I'd buried that memory. Angela laughed, nearly choking on her wine. I blamed the neighbor's kid for weeks. Claire laughed too, gently. He had it coming. They slipped into a rhythm that didn't need translation. Claire had always been around growing up, the fun but oddly mature half-aunt figure who showed up with sketchbooks and let Angela braid her hair. But back then, Sandra kept Claire at arm's length from anything too real. Now, there was no buffer. And no tension. Angela leaned toward me later, while Claire cleared the plates. So, is this, like, permanent? I sipped my wine calm. It's working for now. Angela studied my face. You seem happy. It wasn't a question. Feels like breathing again, I said. She nodded slowly. Then I'm glad. Of course, she called Sandra the next day. I didn't hear the conversation, but I didn't need to. I got the fallout. It was 8:42 a.m. when my phone buzzed with a voicemail. No text, just a missed call and a screaming voice waiting behind the button. Against my better judgment, I listened to it. You let her move in. Are you kidding me? Claire, that clingy little shadow? What the hell, Nathan? She's staying there? With you? In the background, I could hear cabinets slamming. Maybe a drawer. Something fragile hit tile. Then Angela's voice, calm, annoyed. Mom, relax. She's not the problem. Oh, and I suppose I am now. A pause. You walked out, remember? You didn't even want the house. You said it was stagnant energy. Sandra lost it. Full banshee mode. She is playing you. She's always been obsessed with you. Angela again. Mom, listen to yourself. That voicemail was over 4 minutes long. I didn't make it to the end. I didn't have to. I already knew the plot line. Sandra's control relied on roles. The martyr, the villain, the naive onlooker. But Angela didn't play roles anymore. Claire never did. Later that evening, Angela texted me. Sorry about Mom. She's unraveling. I didn't mean to set her off, but I replied, no apology needed. She just doesn't like seeing people at peace when she's not part of it. Angela replied with a single thumbs up. Sandra had always expected her daughter to echo her indignation, to carry her torch. But Angela had grown up in the margins of Sandra's chaos. She'd seen it, felt it, and now she saw the calm Claire brought to the house, to me. And instead of siding with noise, Angela chose silence, chose stability, chose to let the past live where it belonged, outside the front door. The first sign came in the form of a forwarded email from her lawyer to mine. I didn't open it right away. I knew what it was before I clicked. Sandra had finally gotten around to confirming what she thought was her ace in the hole, the house. She always assumed it was hers. Just hers. Because she lived in it longest, because she decorated it, because she hosted book clubs with overpriced wine and forced laughter in it. She never paid the mortgage, never saw the trust documents, never noticed that the name on the deed had always been mine, but not as an individual. It belonged to the Clark Family Trust, set up by my father before I even met her. A legal structure as invisible to her as the foundation of the house itself. But now she wanted her leverage back. She sat in her lawyer's office, a man named Faulkner who billed more for breathing than most people made in a week. She probably expected a dramatic reveal, a loophole, a clause, something he could weaponize on her behalf. Instead, after a quick scan of the paperwork, Faulkner cleared his throat and removed his glasses. Ms. Duncan, he began, this property, both structures on it, have been under the Clark Family Trust since 1996. That predates your marriage by 7 years. She blinked. But I lived there. I was his wife. I contributed. Faulkner raised a hand like a priest gently delivering bad news. You contributed to the home, yes. But the house? It was never legally co-owned. You signed a prenup, remember? She didn't. Or maybe she did and thought she could outmaneuver it now. Trust can't be challenged, she snapped. They can, Faulkner said, but not this one. It's solid. Your name doesn't appear anywhere on the asset list. And with your voluntary separation already in writing, there's no legal basis for a claim. If we challenge, we'll lose. And you'll pay for the privilege. She stormed out, called Claire in the car. I don't know if she was shaking when she dialed, but I know her voice was ice when Claire answered. Are you sleeping with him? Sandra hissed. Claire didn't even pause. You left, Sandra. That doesn't mean. He didn't chase anyone, Claire said, calm, firm. He just stopped waiting. Silence. And not the kind Sandra was used to. The manipulative kind. The kind where she controlled the tension and forced someone to fill it. This was the kind of silence that closed the door. Final. Undeniable. Sandra didn't say goodbye. Just hung up. Claire told me about it later over tea. She's unraveling, she said. But not because of me. Because of everything she thought was hers. I nodded, watching the steam rise from my mug. She was always more interested in owning things than keeping them. Sandra's final Hail Mary came in the form of a typed letter, sent certified mail, requesting shared access to former marital property for purposes of emotional closure and personal healing. I let the lawyer handle it. He sent back 2 lines. The Clark Family Trust does not acknowledge any shared claims. The property is currently under full internal occupancy. Entry is not permitted. No threats. No fight. Just law. Silent, irreversible, merciless law. And for the first time since the day she dropped the divorce papers on my kitchen table, Sandra realized something. She had no home to return to. No legal foothold. No narrative to twist. Only the sound of a door that had already closed. And wasn't opening again. It was a snapshot. Just one frame. Probably taken on someone's iPhone and barely edited before it landed on the community fundraiser's Facebook page, buried between raffle winners and a photo of a Labrador in a bow tie. But this one caught fire. The caption was simple. Thank you to the Clark Family Trust for sponsoring this year's restoration gala. Your generosity helped raise over $40,000 for local programs. Underneath, the photo. Me, Claire, Angela, my sister Meredith. We were standing under a white canvas tent, strings of warm lights above us, smiling like people who'd finally stopped living in a fog. I had my arm behind Claire, hand resting lightly on the small of her back. Her hand, in turn, rested gently on mine. Casual, familiar, but not performative. Angela stood next to Claire, laughing at something mid-joke. Meredith was holding a glass of sparkling water with lemon, the same way she always had since her second surgery. We looked comfortable. Like a family. Not a curated one, not a photoshopped one, but real. Sandra saw it within hours. Maybe minutes. I don't know who sent it to her. Probably someone from her old yoga circle who couldn't resist stirring the pot. Her comment was public. Under the image, beneath a dozen red heart beautiful and clapping hands thank you Clark family, and so wonderful to see this crew again, was a single comment that landed like a shard of glass in a punch bowl. Sandra Duncan. Interesting who moves and once you leave. No emojis. No punctuation flare. Just bitterness, cut clean and left to bleed. It sat there for a while. Claire saw it first. She didn't flinch. Just showed me her phone and said, looks like someone's still refreshing the wrong pages. I chuckled, but inside, I felt that familiar churn. When someone you used to love tries to ruin a quiet moment just because it didn't include them. Angela saw it next. She rolled her eyes. Should I respond? No, I said. Let it drown in its own silence. And it did. No one liked her comment. No one replied. But people did keep liking the photo. Dozens, then hundreds. From local business owners, former neighbors, even the mayor's assistant who remembered my father's old shop. They all saw the image, and more importantly, what wasn't in it. Sandra wasn't central anymore. She wasn't invited. She wasn't mourned. She wasn't missed. She sat behind a screen somewhere, scrolling with one hand and white-knuckling her wine glass with the other. Watching the life she thought would fall apart without her, stabilize, soften, smile. And the worst part for her? She couldn't scream, couldn't accuse, because there was nothing scandalous in the photo. No one caught in a lie, no one breaking any rules. Just people who had once lived through a storm, now standing in the sunlight. Claire never responded, never posted a single thing about it. But 2 days later, the event's Instagram posted another picture, this one from inside the tent. Claire and Angela laughing mid-conversation, Meredith at the raffle table, and me pouring a cup of coffee for an elderly veteran who hadn't missed a gala in 30 years. The caption read, "It's never about who leaves. It's about who stays and helps rebuild." No tag, no drama. But if Sandra saw it, and I know she did, she would have heard the message loud and clear. She tried to re-enter the story, but the story had moved on, and her role? No longer written in. She drove past the house 3 times before finally pulling over. The neighborhood looked the same. Too much the same. Same trimmed lawns. Same wind chimes tapping gently in the breeze. Same old man across the street watering his lawn in slippers. Always in the same pattern. Driveway first, then bushes, then the single stubborn rosebush that never bloomed. But her house, the house, looked different. Not changed. Alive. Curtains she didn't recognize fluttered softly through the windows. Warm light glowed from within, not sterile white, but golden, inviting. The porch had been scrubbed clean. The doormat no longer read Namaste, Betches. The flowers hanging from the hooks were real and thriving. She sat in her car, engine running, fingers trembling against the steering wheel. Her reflection in the rearview mirror startled her. Puffy eyes, makeup smudged, roots growing in. Her new life was supposed to be vibrant, rich with discovery. But Bali was a week of photo ops followed by a stomach bug. Santa Fe was quiet. Too quiet. Nathan hadn't called. Not once. Her followers commented Glow Queen and Self-Love Era under her yoga selfies. But every night, she'd check the Clark Trust page. Every morning, she'd scroll until her thumbs burned, looking for something. Anything. That said he was stuck. But he wasn't. And neither was Claire. She killed the engine, stepped out of the car. The wind caught her scarf. Her heels clicked against the pavement like an echo of who she used to be. She climbed the porch steps slowly, like the house might reject her. She knocked. Claire answered. She opened the door halfway, no further. No smile. No scowl. Just calm. Firm. Sandra's voice cracked on the first word. I didn't think he'd actually move on. Claire tilted her head, not cruelly, not smug. Just tired. You said you were finding yourself. I didn't know what that meant. Then you shouldn't have made it everyone else's problem. Sandra inhaled like she was about to argue. But she couldn't. Not now. Not here. Not in front of that open door and all the things it represented. Claire reached behind the door and pulled out a white envelope. Sealed. Thick paper. No note. She handed it over. Sandra looked at it. What is this? Final notice from the trust, Claire said. Your remaining items were placed in storage. Address is on the label. Unit is paid for 6 months. Sandra's hand shook slightly. He didn't want to tell me himself? Claire's tone stayed even. He doesn't owe you another goodbye. There it was. Not said with cruelty. Said like a fact. Like gravity. Sandra clutched the envelope. I wanted to see the place one last time. The kitchen. The den. Claire didn't move. This isn't your place anymore. I lived here. You left. Silence. Sandra took half a step forward. Claire didn't flinch. But she didn't open the door any wider. You're not welcome here, Sandra, she said. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just honestly. Sandra looked past her shoulder, saw the edge of a chair that hadn't been there before. A bookshelf now filled. A throw blanket over the back of the couch. Everything she had once curated for appearances gone. This place no longer waited for her scent. Her approval. Her return. She stepped back. Slowly. Her eyes welled, but no tears fell. I thought he'd be lost without me, she whispered. Claire didn't answer. She didn't need to. She closed the door gently. Not a slam. Just final. Sandra stood there a moment longer, hand still holding the envelope like it might catch fire. Then she turned, walked back down the porch steps. And as her heels clicked away from the only home she'd ever shaped, something inside her cracked. Not loudly, but definitively. She hadn't been replaced. She'd been removed. By her own hand. 2 weeks. That's how long it took her to snap. Not to reflect. Not to apologize. To snap. The way someone snaps when the glass door they always assumed would swing open, doesn't. When they press their face to the window and see a world they once ruled, moving on without them. I was in a boardroom on the 7th floor, discussing a new expansion project with 2 partners in Claire, who, by then, had taken over brand design for the Trust's outreach campaigns. She sat beside me, tablet open, laser-focused. The same calm presence she carried whether she was choosing curtains or negotiating vendor terms. There was a knock on the glass. My assistant leaned in, hesitant. Sorry to interrupt. There's someone downstairs. Says it's urgent. Wouldn't give a last name, but she's waiting. Claire looked up from her notes. I didn't ask. I already knew. We wrapped the meeting quickly. As I exited the elevator into the lobby, I saw her. Sandra, standing stiff, arms wrapped around herself like a shield that had forgotten how to function. Hair slightly unkempt. Lipstick just off. The sort of thing only someone who knew her for decades would notice. She didn't speak until I was close enough to hear her breath hitch. Nathan, she said, stepping forward, voice cracking slightly. Please, can we talk? Just us. I paused. Claire stepped up beside me. No tension. No hesitation. I looked at Sandra, not with anger. Not even pity. With stillness. I did everything you asked, I said, quiet enough that no one else in the lobby would catch it. Gave you space. Never chased. Never retaliated. She nodded. Twice. The way someone nods when their words are stuck in reverse. I know, she said, eyes beginning to shimmer. I didn't think you'd actually move on. I glanced at Claire, then back at her. That's the thing, I said. You assumed kindness was weakness. Her lip trembled. And it wasn't. I shook my head. It never was. Claire gently took my hand. Sandra saw it, and whatever pieces she had left started to crack. You replaced me with her? She whispered, horror lining every word. I tilted my head slightly. No edge. Just truth. No. You removed yourself. She just stayed. She didn't cry. Not then. She turned, stiffly, walking toward the glass doors like someone who'd forgotten how to leave gracefully. Each step heavy, as if gravity had remembered she existed. She didn't look back. Claire and I stood in the stillness of the lobby a moment longer. And in that silence, I realized something simple. I never had to destroy her. I never needed to make her suffer. She did it all herself. By choosing absence over effort. By mistaking quiet for weak. By never once asking who would hold the house when she let it fall.